Okay, in the last few videos, I've been struggling with trying to make some small adjustments, not by using any of these tools that are contained in the melody editor. In other words, uh, these variation tools, but by just literally, clicking on a eighth note and trying to stretch it out to a quarter note. And it's been, as we've seen, it's been haven't been able to do it. Um, so like, uh, the bottom line, what I've concluded is that you just don't this module, this melody editor, is just not designed for normal piano roll, simple normal piano roll editing. That's the bottom line. It's got so many. The notes that we're looking at uh, are parametrically created, and if you try to go in there and tweak them, you're going to run into problems because what we're really looking at is a comment is kind of the result, the end result of these different variation parameters being applied. Um, in any event, uh, it's a little. That's not the best explanation, but at this point, uh, I think we're done going down that rabbit hole, and let's just try to the learn what these other tools will do, and see where we go from there. Okay? Uh, because there's just so much here, and as I said a number of times, um, there's a beautiful up here at the top right, this little page icon with a eighth note on it. You just click on that, and you can drag the MIDI uh, anywhere you want, and it works beautifully. I've tried it with uh, different DAWs, and it works great. Or you can drag it onto the desktop. That works great too. So the workflow is uh, is great, and you don't really need to edit the MIDI in this module. You just edit it. You just bring it into something else and edit it there. Okay. All right. So had to get that out of the way, and I'm sorry for plodding through these things, but maybe we learned something. I did. All right. So the next thing we're going to look at, um, we've looked at one variation under this variation icon, and that one was the split long notes. We haven't looked at connecting notes and these other four variations. So why don't we go to uh, simplify, because that sounds simple. Okay, so we'll choose. Let's choose the third measure here, the third bar. All right, that's a good one because we don't have any variations applied to the third bar, right? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we do. We have the lead-in notes. So what are those? Well, let's start by just taking off the lead-in note, turning that off. See what we get. Okay. No change. Yes, there is a change. Okay. Look at look at the F on beat 4 of bar 2. Look at that. Okay. So the F changes to D, and then in beat 3 we have two E's, two eighth note E's, and they're changed to a quarter note C. All right. So on and off. Now, it's quickly making sense. Look at the number of lead-in notes we have. It says select number of lead-in pickup notes. The notes are added before the section at the end of the previous section. Okay, so this lead-in note variation actually changes the notes in the preceding bar. Okay? It says select the number of lead-in notes. Okay, and here we have 2. The notes are added before the section at the end of the previous section. Okay, so it says before the section. It's referring to us. We're working on section 3 or bar 3, and it says the notes are added before the section. In other words, I would say it's clearer to say the notes are added in the previous bar. Okay, and we have 2. So that's what's going on. So when I move the mouse off the bar 2, we see the lead-in notes, and then when I move it on, well, let's see. Hold on a minute. Let's go back. If I turn it off, so, well, let's do one. One note. Okay? Alright, so that would mean the last quarter note in bar 2, which is D, the lead-in notes should be adding that. Is that what it says? The note before, insert a lead-in pickup note before the section. Okay, well, there's that D is the pickup note. For the very first section, this is not available. Well, that's obvious because the first section doesn't have a previous section. Okay, so we chose 1 and we made it a quarter note. Okay, so you choose whether you want a lead-in note. You choose whether you want 2 of them. And now I don't know what that means. Does that mean that you choose, if you choose 2, does that mean on beats 3 and 4? Or does that mean 2 notes on beat 4? Or, you know what? Well, let's do 16ths. Okay, so if we turn it, okay, this is making it more clear. Okay, so without it, beat 3, I'm sorry, measure 2, beat 4 has an F, a quarter note F on the 4th beat. Okay, the lead-in note is going to add a note right before the first beat on beat 3. In other words, right before the E. So we've got an F already. So without the lead-in note, we've got an F on beat 4 of measure 2, and then measure 3, we've got an E. So if we add just 1/16th, there we go. That's what we get. We get that 16th note, and it's also an F. Now, that is probably because the lead-in note is like a 1 scale step away from the note that it's leading into. Okay? So, kind of like a passing tone on the penultimate, well, not the penultimate, but the last note of the measure or the previous measure. It's kind of like, okay, we're going to add it there. Anyway, let's hear what this sounds like. Yeah, a little skip note. That's what's going on. It's nice. Very musical. Right. And if we don't have it, here's what we get musically. Yeah, it's completely different. I mean, it's really easier to see what it is when you just listen to it. Okay, so we've added that 16th. Get that. Now what if we just make it 2? Oh, okay. That's nice. Alright. So it added, we can see exactly the 2 notes that it added. The 2 16ths, a G and an F leading into the E. So it looks like it's going to take whatever the first note is in the measure where you apply the leading notes. Whatever that first note is, it's going to add some notes maybe above or below, kind of like scale step wise going into the first note. Alright, let's check it out on let's add a leading note in bar 2. See what we get there. We'll add that variation, and we'll add, alright, leading notes, 1 note. Let's do the 16th again. Alright, so it added an F, which is 1 step above the E. Maybe the first leading note it adds is going to always be 1 scale step above the first note in the measure, where you're adding the leading notes. So in other words, when we take a measure like measure 2 or bar 2 and we add the leading notes, what we're going to do is we're going to add a leading note that goes into the first, that leads into the first note of the measure where we are adding the leading note. Okay, it's a lot, I think it's a lot easier to understand than to explain. But the question is, like, well, what pitch is the leading note? Now it's easy to see the rhythm because we just choose the duration. We only have 3 choices. Let's see what happens with an 8th. Okay, it adds an 8th instead of so 16th. We can see the F on beat 4 of measure 1. There's the 16th. There's the F. Now what happens if it's a quarter? Because we already have a quarter there. Oh, look at that. Look at that. So it can't add a quarter because that's already there. So what it does is, it, instead of adding a note, it changes the pitch and drops it down to the scale step below the first note. You know? So here we're above with the 16th, and we added a 16th. Now here's the 8th, and that's above. And then when we go to quarter, it adds it below. Alright, so let's take it off and go back to, let's see how it reacts in bar 3. Okay, so let's go to 1 note. We got 1 note, and there's our 16th. So it's acting just the way it did in bar 2, right? There's a 16th. So the eighth, we're going to get two Fs, two eighth notes. Right. Then the quarter, it's going to drop it down again to D, a quarter note D, and that's what happens. Because the first note in the measure is the same in both cases, right? All right. Now let's see. Let's try it in bar 4 and see what happens with lead-in notes. So the note before the D in bar 4, I'm sorry, the E in bar 4 is D, quarter note D. So lead-in notes, okay, it made an eighth. There's a 16th. Here's the quarter. Oh, now it didn't change the pitch. So now we're figuring out how this thing works. Okay, we turn it off. We've got a D. We turn it on and we select quarter. Wait a minute. So it may, in bar 3, there's no change. If we have a 16th, the 8th, and then the quarter, there's no change. But when we select this one, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, over here we've got to look at this note. So here's without the variation, here's with the variation. And then if we select the lead-in note, there's the 16th, there's the 8th, there's the quarter. So without the variation, the lead-in variation on bar 2, the fourth beat of bar 1 is an F. If we turn it on, it's changing the F to a D. Okay, but if we go over here, the fourth beat is a D, and if we turn the, doesn't matter whether we have it on or off, it doesn't change. That seems inconsistent to me. But let's just move on, and let's fool around with the 2-note possibility, okay, and see what happens there. Maybe things will become more clear. So we're going to select in bar 4 the lead-in notes. We're going to go, let's do 2/16. Okay, see what's happening here. Okay, well, we can see easily that it went from a quarter note, and it created the 2/16, and now they come up from the bottom. They lead up from the bottom, and that kind of makes sense, because if they came from the top, they would you'd have to have what? You'd have to have the G and F. So you kind of have a leap up from the D, would leap up to the G and F. You know. Well, anyway, let's hear that. Yeah, that's really nice. That little embellishment makes a lot of difference. And let's hear it without. By the way, you can make these changes while it loops, the play loops. So that's great. You don't have to stop, really hear what's going on. So that's without. And I like the two notes there. I like it because it drops down to the C. Goes from D, C, back up to the D, and then up to the E. Really nice. Let's do 1. That's not going to sound as interesting because the pitch doesn't change. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, that's not as interesting. Because the D, you just have it repeats. It's not bad, but the two notes, yeah, definitely create that little interest. Kind of drop down to from the D to the C, and then you run up. And you have a nice little pattern of 4 16th notes, 2 of them on the in the last measure, leading into the 2 first notes in bar 4. It's really nice. That's terrific. All right, we change them to 8s. Not as good. And then quarter. Oh, look at that. So it's, with the quarter notes, it's going back 2 beats. That's what's going on. Because 2 quarters is a half, right? So it's going to change, the change in 4/4, the change is going to start on beat 3 with 2 notes. Let me stop there. I'm going to say that again. With the leading notes set to a quarter and 2 notes, quarter and a quarter is a half. So the variation is going to affect the notes in beat 3 and 4 in the preceding measure. And that's what's going to happen. Okay, let's see if I'm right about that. All right, so if we look at bar 2, which is the preceding measure, if we selected 2, if we go to bar 3 and we select 2 quarter notes, yeah, it affects the third. Okay, so you have, if you look at the third beat in bar 2, you have 2 eighth notes E's, right? So if we turn on the leading notes with 2 notes, those change to a C. Okay, so it leads up from C, D, leading into that E. So we go to 1 note, it only changes the third beat goes back to where it was. Then let's do 2 eighths. Now that is interesting. 2 eighths. 1, 2 eighths. It looks like the lead-in note, yeah. So here's the 2 eighths. In bar, in the 4th beat of bar 2, the 2 eighths lead-in notes are the G and the F leading into the E. in bar 1, in beat 1 of bar 3. Okay? Okay. And if we go to quarters, we end up changing. Now notice with the quarters, the 4th beat changes to a quarter note. So we end up with a quarter note C, a quarter note D, quarter note C on the 3rd beat, a quarter note D on the 4th beat, and then those lead into the E. All right. It's, it's a lot more confusing to kind of verbalize what's going on than to actually see it and hear it. Let's hear it. Okay, it leads up. I mean, the leading notes work a lot better in shorter duration, don't they? So I'm going to go with the 8th. Also, the leading notes are going to change the melody you've got in the in that preceding bar. And then if we go to 1, well, let's just do the 16ths. No, I don't really like that. I don't like that leap up from the F to the G. It doesn't really work. Let's try. I don't like that either. Let's do 1 note. 16th. Yeah, that works. That really doesn't change our melody in bar 2. Yeah, I like that. So, as you can see, yeah, I mean, I'm trying to drill down and really see what's going on, and that's fine. Do you have to do that? No. I mean, you can just use your ears and look at what's going on. But I think it's worthwhile to kind of get a feel for this. Let's play around with it here. Let's go with 16ths. So we've got 1 note, and that just the variation with 1 note at 16th is pretty simple. You just end up with a little skip note. 8th. So here's without the variation, we just get an F in beat 4. Then with the 16th, we get a little skip note, 16th skip note F. And with the 8th, we get 2 Fs, 2 8th notes, so our pitch hasn't changed. And then with the quarter, the pitch changes. It drops down to a D. Okay. And if we go 2 notes, changes the melody pretty significantly. Let's try 2 notes 8. That's kind of nice. Kind of that leap from the E to the 5. It's a little awkward, kind of like an elbow move. I think that's better. Let's try it without. I think I'd prefer not to have the lead-in note. I just like the simplicity. Like in our first bar, we've just got we establish, just a very simple stepwise motion from E to F, half step, that da, 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 da. And then we go from a very, very, almost the simplest of all melodies or motives. Just 4 quarter notes, just moving up, alternating back and forth 2 times. It then gets into a much more complicated rhythm. So kind of the combination of starting out like super simple and then going quickly into a much more rapidly moving melody. It kind of works. I'll play it one more time. See what you think. Starts out simple, and then we gain some energy. Yeah, and then we kind of end up on a really agile fourth measure. And then it goes back to the simple, when it loops, it goes back to that simple opening 4 quarter notes. Yeah, that really works. That really works. If you think about it, from a musical point of view. Okay, so I think that's enough for this video, and I guess we've taken a good look at leading notes, and we got a pretty good handle on what's going on. It's a real simple variation to apply, and you're going to see you get instant results, and you just listen to it and make the kind of judgment call that we just walked through. Okay, so I'll see you in the next video.